rongo purutia kia u, purutia kia ma, purutia mai te tāurua te rangi. Ka tīna ka wena ko taka te manawaora. Tīna toko te manawaora ki wea, tīna toko te manawaora kia rangi nui e tū nei, kia papa e takoto nei, ka uruora. Ka uruora hoki te wenua, ka uruora ngā tāngata, ka uruora. Ka uruora hoki te ware, ka uruora ngā rākau, ka uruora. Ka uruora hoki te rangi, ka uruora te atua, ka uruora. Ko te waka uruora ki te kaununuku, ko te waka uruora ki te kaununui, ko te waka uruora ki te kauroroa, oi e uruora, e wai iau, e au marama. E rongo whakairia ki ki runga turuturu iti waka maua kia tīna, tīna, wi e, tāri e. A kauri taku aro ki a rātou ko eke atu ki ngā tai o te pō ki te tai akarunga. Ko rātou ngā tini mate o te matu e oki atu nei ki te tāo o rātou tupuna e tātari ana nei mō rātou. Ko rātou i aku raukura ki te pō me ngā tini mate o te motu e tākoto wa angu nei roto i a rātou kāinga me te hunga māwiwi. Tēnei te mihi atu ki koutou i aku raukura ki te pō e whakarere atu. Ka papuri tone mātou ngā kupu o a ki o rātou mā nā te uti o rongo mai te ki ko te pō te kai ari i te rā, ko te mate te kai ari i te oranga. Ka ki tō tika mai au ki tēnei rangi kiko ki te tuku ngā mihi aro a ki runga i a koutou katoa e te whānau tēnā koutou. Ka uri taku waro ki tūraki ra e piki atu ki tā pako ki pāpata i ki o rongorongo. Ka rere te kāwi mā ngā ki puke atua ko wainui helme ki te rere atu ki toki remutaka ki tararua e ke o ki parera o ki pō kai mangu whakauti atu ki pipi nui a te titiro ki te rimurapo ki tō tika atu ki tūraki rai ko te mana nui o te papa e ora nei e titia nei taku raukura i te whenua ko te atia ua no runga i te rangi taranaki ānui āruru ki te papa e tau nei. Āruru ki te papa e tau nei ki runga i te ara ākautangi o tupua ororangi, ka tau mai taku manu ki runga i tēnei ware o tātou, tēnei te mihi atu ki koutou Creative HQ, tēnā koutou. Ngā kaimai, ngā koutou e wakarite ai tēnei uinga o tātou, e kore mutu te wakami a kia koutou pa tonu mai nei. O tira, koutou, nau mai. Nau mai e rarau mai nei ki raro i te tā uu o Kumaunga, o mā tairangi, e hara ko tangi te kio, e hara ko Melchizedek, ko mā tairangi tērā, ko puke au ki te War Memorial, taino atu, a ki puke inau, ki puke aupapa, a ki au mairangi, tēnei te mokopuna o tēnei maunga e tuatu nei, e mihi atu nei, ki koutou katoa tēnā tātou. No reira ki te kaupapa o te rangi nei, ka tika nei ia ki tēnei pai o ngā rangatira wa ine, he mea a tāua tēnei, te tū o ngā wā inei ki runga i tēnei pai tapu o tātou. He tikanga tāwito tēnei, he tikanga o oku mātua tūpuna, te tau to'e, a koa he reo Pākehā, a koa he reo Māori, he tau to'e tonu kei te aere nei. A otira kami ia kia ki koutou, a e ngā mema, tēnā koutou. Otira kia tātou katoa, a ki runga ki raro, ki roto ki waro, rire au, hai marire, kia pata. Are mai e ngā iwi tātou e piki ki runga ki tō waka i a te manawa nui hapa e ngā oi ko te pono, ko te tika, ko te rangi mari e te tata ko te aro a te punga, ko te tokai wero ia e moki, te pauere ngā atu e. No reira, āpiti ono tātai ono te ungamate ki te ungamate, āpiti ono tātai ono tātou te ono ora kia tātou, tēnā tātou katoa. Hello. My name is Connor McLeod. I'm here today on behalf of Te Atiawa and Taranaki Whānui. And I'm here over to Ngāti Toa over at Pariroi, Apananga. I've been asked to come in this evening to be able to open up this kaupapa. Just a quick little bit of what I talked about, acknowledging the ones that aren't able to be here, also the ones that have passed over that laid the road for us to be able to walk on today, and the ones that are at home sick. Coming back to this world, I used a proverb from Te Whiti o Rongomai from Parihaka Papakainga, for those of you that know who that is and where that is. He said that the night is what brings the day, and that the death is what brings the living. And so we use that to come back to this world to be able to mihi to all of you, their live ones. And I started to locate ourselves. So if we go over to the mouth of the fish, which is where the ferries come in and out, there's a point over there by a random lighthouse that's Tūlakirai. All of those maunga, all the way up to Remutaka, all the way back down to Ngāuranga, over to Porirua, and then back around, lays out the boundary of Te Atiawa and Taranaki Wānui, mana whenua for this area of Poneke. It is really important tonight to be able to acknowledge that this event, this debate, in Māori is called a tau toe toe. It's a tikanga that my ancestors used to do long, long ago, that we still continue to do today. If it's in English, if it's in Māori, it doesn't matter, it's still the exact same today. But I wanted to acknowledge this paipai specifically. It's not often that we see a paipai full of wahine being able to carry a kaupapa like this. On behalf of mana whenua, it was my honour to be able to be here tonight. I hope you have a lovely evening. The song specifically was talking about welcoming everybody to jump up onto our waka, onto our canoe, and that canoe is called Te Mana Wanui, Big Heart. And to lift the hoi, the pedals of truth, of truthfulness, of peacefulness, and all that other lovely stuff we like to put down before a debate starts. Other than that, tēnei anō te mihi atu ki a koutou. Please join me in a round of applause to welcome the CD of Creative HQ Cafe. Kia ora.
Tēnā koutou katoa, and welcome to Creative HQ, your place of innovation. A special welcome to our politicians this evening, and I would like us to applaud each and every one of them for coming and spending some of their time with us. So thank you for being here, the Honourable Dr. Aisha Farrell, the Honourable Judith Collins, the Honourable Julianne Genter, Natalia Albert, and returning Dr. Panji Palmer, who was with us 3 years ago. So I'm a swing voter from way back, just so you all know. Wearing the blue blazer with the red dress tonight. Won't reveal what colour the underwear are, but they're a different colour again. So I'm very interested in what you have to say about innovation, and I will be deciding my party vote tonight. Hey, and a warm welcome to all of you in our audience. You are our leaders, our change makers, and our innovation curious. And we again are so grateful that you're spending your time with us tonight. We realise there's some other debate happening on television somewhere, but you're here in person. You get the chance to drink the drink, eat the food, and mingle and ask the great questions. So let's do that. Let's make sure that the energy stays alive throughout the place tonight. Look, we all know that Kiwis are ambitious. We punch above our weight on the world stage in so many areas. Female leadership. We've got that tonight. Let's have another round of applause for that. Leadership in environmental conservation, agricultural exports, the film industry, rugby, maybe not rugby, our aid and development programs, and our cultural influence. But we also punch above our weight on the innovation stage. New Zealand ranks 24th on the UN's Global Innovation List of 132 countries. Our universities are renowned for their research and academic programs, and we've also been involved in cutting-edge research in fields such as space technology, agriculture, and renewable energy. But we could do better. And we have all of the ingredients here in our society, in our ecosystem, to do so. New Zealand has a rich history of entrepreneurs. You have all heard the big names, Peter Beck from Rocket Lab. And I recently heard, I think a couple of weeks ago, I was at an event where he was speaking, and I think he said that the Mahi Peninsula now ranks 4th in the world for the number of rocket launches, behind USA, Soviet Union, and China. And you all know Brienne West from Atique. So she has proven that you can have a fair supply chain and a genuinely sustainable product whilst being financially sustainable. Just ask any of her shareholders who exited for a 4,800% return on their investment. and Halter, who are boosting productivity and raising profitability whilst putting animal welfare first through their farming community technology. Then there's Xero, Allbirds, GameLift, Sequent, LancerTech, PushPay, Powered by Proxy, Mint, Crimson Education, Vent. You've heard the names. These are great New Zealand companies punching above their weight on the global stage. They've all achieved global scale and success. Closer to home here, right here in Wellington, are companies like Sharesies, Henry, Kogo, Tapi, Marcelo, FTN Motion. I could go on. Companies born by extraordinary founders who are ambitious, and not just to build successful companies, but in their strive for greater purpose through their work. We need more of these companies in New Zealand. New Zealand businesses spend more than $1 billion per year on Google and Facebook ads. 1.5 million plus nights per year are booked in New Zealand on Airbnb. This is New Zealand money leaving our shores to tech companies internationally. New Zealand needs to be the supplier of those technology companies and a leader of change through these services, not just a consumer of it. The election this year, this debate is very timely because the New Zealand Startup Council have just issued the Upstart Nation report, and within it, they've set ambitious targets that will lead us to their vision of Aotearoa being recognised as a vibrant upstart ecosystem and a global leader in generating sustainable value through startup businesses created between now and 2030. And these targets include more than doubling the number of current startups in New Zealand to 5,000. Currently we have 2,400. And to achieve this, $2 billion of new capital needs to be injected. Investment in this country in innovation currently is 1.4% of GDP. The University of Auckland, and I know we've got people from there tonight, thanks for coming, they recently drew comparisons between our spend and Finland's. Finland invests 3% of GDP into innovation, and they have less income inequality, they have a higher GDP per capita, and they score higher on the Human Development Index than we do. If we increased our innovation investment to the same amount, 3% of GDP, this would add another 59 billion New Zealand dollars to GDP annually and go a long way to solving some of our biggest challenges in housing, health, education and infrastructure. Another benchmark, the Irish government. They're a shining example currently of the impact that investing in a thriving startup ecosystem can have. They are currently sitting on a surplus of $16 billion through their investment in Enterprise Ireland. Most countries around the world are in crisis. They're sitting on a surplus asking what to do with it. Often innovation is associated with economic measures like developing new products and growing revenue, but as we can see from our friends in Finland, that has a direct impact on our social well-being as well. The New Zealand government, of course, has a significant role to play in passing legislation and providing funding that supports this activity. And I'm really interested to hear from each of you tonight regarding the contribution that you would make and your party would make to the New Zealand startup ecosystem if you were elected. But here at Creative HQ, we don't just expect the government to do it all for us. We believe in strong public-private collaboration and we want to do our bit. 2023 marks the 20th birthday of Creative HQ. We were opened back in 2003 by the then Prime Minister Helen Clark. And since then we've launched 332 early stage startups, of which 1,263 active jobs exist today. Our programs put us in the corner of these incredible founders who trust us with part of their entrepreneurial journey. Our mission is to see them succeed in their mission. We equip them with the capability, the confidence, and the connections at the right time to help them succeed. We pick them up when they fall down, and we give them the tools to stay on their feet and keep going and create the types of outcomes that New Zealanders want to see. Today at Creative HQ, we're launching a new impact initiative. Recently, 96 high net worth New Zealanders wrote an open letter to government asking to pay more tax. I'm sure you're all familiar with it. An alternative is for those 96 high net worth individuals, or others with money in their pockets, to support the types of programs that we run here at Creative HQ. cutting out the middlewoman, that's you, and directly supporting those impact entrepreneurs who come through our ventures and create better social, environmental and cultural outcomes for Kiwis. I'm talking about homegrown entrepreneurs right here, early stage, that you probably haven't heard about yet. Erica Butters from Volition. She's empowering people with disabilities to make the decisions about the external caregivers they interact with. And there's Adam Rohe and Ben Sarton from Every Gender, who are addressing inequality for the trans community by offering their lived experience to workplace inclusion conversations. And there's the Lofty team. Mental health and wellbeing is such a hot topic in New Zealand right now. They're saving and uplifting lives through better, more accessible mental health systems. These are the type of entrepreneurs who walk through our door before you hear about them. And we want to do more to support them with the help of everybody in this room. As always, I'd like to thank our shareholder, Wellington NZ. We've got some representatives here tonight for their continued support of the work that we do here at Creative HQ. The Wellington City Council, who help fund our event series, events like this, which play a really key role in connecting our startups, our governments, our corporates to come together and have great conversations like this. And finally, I'd like to thank our incredible team here at Creative HQ. Tanisha, in particular, over here, who's been a little bit shy. This is her swan song. Tanisha's about to leave Creative HQ, but she has, thank you. She has put so much time and effort and sweat and stress into bringing tonight together. So thank you. So the most important job of the night, passing over to Johnny Hadden, our incredible GM of Government Innovation.
All right, kia ora, kia ora. So great to be here. Thank you all so much for coming out. I get the pleasure of welcoming up our amazing guests. So first, hands together for Judith Collins, everybody. Thank you. Please. Hey, Judith, from the bustling streets of Papakura, yeah?
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, spokesperson for none other than Research, Science and Innovation. Once used to have a different job as the leader of the opposition, but this is much more fun. Yeah, who needs that? Who needs that hanging over you? So thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming. All right, next, hands together, Julianne Genta. Walk on music. Look, from the US originally, citizen now in New Zealand, running for just over the hill in the traditionally red seat of Rangatai. So welcome, so great to have you here. Next, I have Pamji Palmer. Kia ora. Pamji was here in 2020 for our last debate, wearing a blue blazer for National. She is now representing ACT here and is 9th on their party list, also the spokesperson for Research, Innovation and Science. Natalia Albert, hands together please. Deputy Leader of TOP, representing the Holy Grail of Wellington, this seat right here, Wellington Central, so welcome. And I know you're excited, you've got a different route into government this time, so 2023. That's what you'll be having. Yeah? Ka pai. And last, of course, the Minister, Dr. Aisha Varel. Kia ora, come on out. Oh, there we go. That wasn't me. That wasn't me, I promise. And of course, the Minister currently of Research, Science and Innovation, also the Minister of some other portfolio, but you know that's an easy one and frees up all the time. So here we are. Look, as Catherine put it earlier, look, we face some big challenges and innovation is vital for making this progress. So what we want to do tonight is we want to talk through a few topics. First of all, if these guys are going to spend 90 seconds giving you all a bit of an elevator pitch on why they should get your votes, party votes, and maybe if you live in your electorate as well. Second is we're going to be looking at big picture thinking. Where to from here? What are the big issues we face? What are they going to do about it? Next, we're going into the tech sector, startup scene. You know, there's lots of ambition there. You heard all of the potential from Catherine. What are the policies that they're coming out with that are going to help those founders? And then lastly, actually, we also need innovation inside the machine. What is government innovation going to look like under their leadership as well? So, and then we're going to end on a bit of a lightning quick fire round as well. So that's how tonight's running. All right? Sweet? Yep. Sweet. All right, so first up is the pitch. We're here at Creative HQ. Oh, thank you. I won't stand. First of all, we will start with you, Minister. 90 seconds. We have a great little timing system here. If anyone's going along at any stage, I've been asked by you all to keep you to time. So if anyone's going too long, I'm going to give my mate Liam over here the 5-second mark, and then he's going to put this sign up. Okay, there. And everyone's going to clap. We call it clap off. So if you're running over time, you've got 5 seconds to wrap up, and then the crowd are going to clap. And that's what we're going to do at the end of this first round for the 90-second pitch. All right. Timer, you set, Liam?
Ready.
Over to you, Aisha.
Tēnā koutou, lovely to be here, and thanks for Creative HQ for bringing us together, and welcome to my fellow candidates. Look, thank you, Catherine, for that brilliant introduction, because to me that really nails the theory of the case for innovation and government investment in innovation. And many of the statistics that Catherine quoted are also found at the beginning of the Science White Paper, a Science Innovation System White Paper, Te Ara Pairangi. We are succeeding in growing our innovation spend. Private spending in research and development has gone up by over $1 billion per year while we've been in government. A lot of it aided by the R&D tax credit, which has supported $2 billion of innovation. We've also driven created the New Zealand Capital Growth Partners Fund and a new form of support for innovative non-R&D businesses through the Mihi Research and Development credit. If I was to say what's the future under Labour, one of the big things we want to do is to drive change against some of those really big challenges that we're facing, climate change, our ability to have enjoy health and well-being in our population, and do that through mission-led approaches that bring government and industry and community together to partner. Looking very much to getting into the debate tonight. Thank you.
Tēnā koutou katoa, was that loud enough? Ko Mexico toku whenua, ko Natalia Albert toku ingoa. It's lovely to be here. I feel it's a bit of a full circle moment for me, and I'll tell you why in a minute. But I'm here to advocate and campaign and demonstrate a style of politics that's more about collaboration than competition. And I have demonstrated that from the campaign, and I intend to take that straight into Parliament with the Opportunities Party, which I am a member of, because it is the only party that can work across the political spectrum, which is what I think we need to do to tackle the tax, the inequity, the climate change, the infrastructure issues that not one single party will solve on their own on one term. And the other thing I'm going to advocate for in this debate and talk a lot about are kind of three key things about innovation, which is accessibility, higher quality engagement with the startup sector from government, and oh my God, they were so clear and now it's gone. But they are three. Anyway, the full circle moment. If it weren't for startups, when I moved to New Zealand 12 years ago, I wouldn't be where I am. They are more flexible, more inclusive, more tolerant, more adaptable, and way more welcoming to diverse perspectives than any big corporation or institution in this country. And without them, the future of New Zealand for the next 5 or 10 years, where we're going to grow a diverse population, these people and these groups that are going to be aging and growing and diversifying won't be able to access the big institutions without the startup sector. So I will be a huge advocate. I'm very honored to be here tonight to kind of full circle and give back to a community that has given so much to me, especially creators here. I just wanted to wrap my sentence.
Greetings, everyone. Really great to be here tonight. I'm Panjik Bama. I'm the ACT Party candidate and also the spokesperson for Research, Science and Innovation. Can I say thank you to Connor for that beautiful welcome, and Catherine, thank you for providing your insight into the science, research and innovation sector from your hands-on experience. And congratulations to Creative HQ for doing 20 years and the work that you have done in the startup sector. So ACT Party believes that science should be actually driven by scientists. It should be free of any political ideology, free from any unnecessary red tape and bureaucratic obstacles. And it's for a number of years now, science has been governed by what cannot be done. And governments overreach to dictate what kind of subjects you can work on in terms of your research and innovation, and which subjects you can't. That needs to stop. So research, science and innovation needs to be shielded from unnecessary political interference, so that our scientific community can maintain that integrity, can uphold public trust, and most importantly, maximize benefits for all living beings and our environment as well. And having said this, it's important that all the ethical considerations are upheld, so that the conduct of research is done is responsible. So we want to see that the ethical considerations are taken into consideration, but overall we would like scientists to lead our science and innovation sector. So remember, Party Vote Act, advanced voting starts from 2nd.
Tēnā koutou katoa. My name is Julianne Genter. I'm standing to be the next MP for Rongotai, and I've been an MP for the Green Party for 11 years. I definitely would encourage you to give your party vote to the Greens, because the sustainable, equitable future that we all want is just right there. It's so close. But we need some system change at central government level in order to enable communities, organizations to be able to live without having to use fossil fuels. We can do that. We can have the lowest cost, totally renewable electricity in the world. We can have warm, dry, healthy homes. We can ensure that we have affordable housing within our cities, that we have transport that moves people and goods at lower cost and with less pollution, so we have cleaner air. And all of this is technically possible, but there's still a whole lot of change that needs to happen at central government level, at local government level, to support those changes. And the Green Party has the comprehensive set of policies that are evidence-based. We've demonstrated in government, we have worked with the national government to bring in home insulation program, to clean up toxic sites, national cycleways, and we've worked on the fringes of this Labour government. But imagine how much more we could do if we had more government MPs and ministers sitting around the cabinet table. For that, we need your vote.
Hi everyone, I'm Judith Collins. Look, I want to acknowledge Creative HQ and everyone else who's here tonight, including the other candidates. Has never in my years in politics come to a place where when people applaud you, they're really saying, shut up. I mean, it's amazing. Thank you so much. This is an innovation we should bring in. Look, this is the most fun job I've ever had in politics. I mean, it's just so much fun. And the reason is it's all about solutions. So earlier this year, I set up a cross-party caucus on AI and how we could learn more about it together. And I rang Chloe Swarbrick up, who's my friend in the Greens, and we got together, and we've got Labour people come in and eventually ACT as well. And we got together and we actually learnt an awful lot more than what we started with. So I thought that was great. And it wasn't about trying to come up with some cross-party policy. It's actually about understanding a lot more. So that's the sort of thing we can do. We've released 2 really innovative policies this year. One on GE and basically bringing in a biotech regulator and getting rid of the effective ban on GE, so that we can, in fact, make sure we can deal with our climate change emissions and all of the other challenges we have to deal with in the world, including cancers and everything else. And the latest is a tech policy which includes all sorts of things around visas, but also around ESOPs, the early startup companies, to make sure that people can actually take a share in those businesses without thinking, can I do it? And the other one is, of course, a Minister for Tech, and that's me. Thank you.
We do have 3 microphones. 3% budget cuts come this far too, so you're sharing microphones. No, actually, you're up first. But first, some quick ground rules. Okay. So this is not a library. After all, we're Wellington, we don't even have a library. But if the audience wants to get involved, by all means go for it. So if you want to, look, I'm not saying heckle, but if you want to give a wahoo or a cheer or a whatever, go for it. If you want to do a subtle eye roll and a loud sigh, by all means go for it. Just, you can't see it, but just, you know, read the room, be a little bit polite. The old motto around Creative HQ is just don't be a dick. So adhere to that. Vision and Z, if one of you are in the room and you're going to do one of those disruptive things, just don't be a dick. So don't do that. So those are our ground rules, but otherwise, our first section here is where to from here, looking at the things that will ensure our government is well prepared for the big picture things. And my first question is going to be to you, Minister, followed by you, Judith Collins, and that is, how will Judith... We're tight. Okay, all right. Oh, true, okay, all right. Not here as Minister, okay. How will Labour, how will National use innovation to make progress towards such key big issues like what we've heard this morning, climate change, housing, inequality?
That's the idea and the problem at the heart of the Te Ara Paerangi White Paper is how do we mobilise around these massive challenges. And we have a range of talented people out in our science and innovation system and research system doing absolutely amazing work. And we could all name several. But what government hasn't done is been there as a coordinator and convening and bringing people together around some of those biggest challenges. That is what the mission-led approach to research, science and innovation is. It is to say, let's set some priorities, and they might be, for example, clean tech, or they might be how do we set a mission of eliminating diabetes over the next 30 years and its public health impacts, and then mobilising, yes, science, fundamental science and innovators, bringing, incentivising commercial participation in that, but also where does the community sit in that? What regulatory changes do we need to smooth the way for these innovations out into the market? So that's where we want to take it. That's what we mean by mission-led science. It's about tackling the big challenges. It is not the only thing we will do in science. We still want to keep the R&D tax credit going. We still want funds like Marsden so that if someone with a bright idea can go and test that. We'll always do that. But I think that's what's missing in our ecosystem, and that's where we want to pitch into the next term.
What would be your...
Well, I think one of the big things is that we have to work with the private sector far more than what's currently done. I mean, there's not going to be much innovation coming out of MB, to be frank, other than how to take 3,500 staff and turn them into 7 in 6 years. I mean, frankly, that's not the way to go. We need to trust the scientists and to find the solutions through that. So we're not anticipating any changes to the funding mechanisms that there are at the moment. But what we do see is real opportunities for us to work far better with it. So when we're looking at some of the science that we've seen, that's now, well, how do I pronounce that again? It's asparagopolis, isn't it? Asparagopolis. Is that the right? That's right. Yeah, that's one. The seaweed that's been a native to New Zealand and also Australia, that can bring down, according to the research, methane emissions from 60 to 90%. If fed to bovines and other ruminants. It's also that sort of work that's gone on as well. And I think when you look at how we could actually do so much better by actually getting out, and certainly as I have done, get out to see the scientists, say, where's your solutions on this? The priorities on funding and the priorities on the areas, I don't think they should be set up by a panel, which is not actually led by scientists. But actually, really, we need to actually have people who have no skin in the game, but who are experts, and that we need them to help advise the Cabinet and to make those decisions, because we've got to have priorities. We're only a small nation, but my goodness, we can do a lot better.
Julianne, can I ask you, what do you think New Zealand's big export is going to be in 10 plus years, and what will the Greens do to support this community, the community that you sort of speak to, to achieve that?
Well, firstly, I hope we don't just have one big export. I think we need a whole diversification and range. And I was really inspired by, it's getting to be an old book now, but Get Off the Grass by Dr. Sean Hindy and the late Sir Paul Callahan, which looks at other small countries and looks at the range of policy settings and investments that they use to diversify and support innovation in their economy. And I think New Zealand can learn a lot from that. So if you haven't seen that, it's a really good summary. For us in the Greens, it's about government leadership and setting a direction. We need to invest more in a whole lot of public good things. And that includes public good science, environmental monitoring and evaluation, and all government data needs to be open and accessible. I think one of the biggest risks that we have in New Zealand as a smaller country is we get dominated by a few big players quite easily, and then those players, we get some industry capture, and then they sort of dominate the political debate, and that stops us from making progress and moving forward in a whole lot of areas where we can move forward. So I think government's got to put a price on pollution, has to regulate, put more money into monitoring, evaluation, all of the things that, quite frankly, the parties on the right probably mean when they say we're going to get rid of red tape. Actually, I think it does a disservice to the importance of government investment in those things.
Okay, so one of the matters on us, without question, is, I suppose, AI is everywhere, right? So in the middle here, Pamji, Nat, what was my question? Was what's your view on regulating, that technology in a way that protects but doesn't stifle innovation?
That's actually a very good question, and I think you have the answer in your question as well. So in the sense, what I believe in is that when we think about politicians, think about regulations, it should be based on that principle that there is a problem identified. So first we need to see what that problem is, and then we need to see that the regulation is in proportion to the definition of that problem. And unnecessarily bringing up regulations is only going to stifle innovation. And in my view, we all are using AI in some form. Like I use GPS for a number of years. Only time when I'm not using my GPS is when I'm going home, because I know where my home is. But otherwise, I'm always using GPS. So AI is there. We are using AI directly and indirectly in so many different ways. And for me, it's about cost and benefit analysis. It's about ensuring that it is actually going to really solve the problem. But what is that problem? First, we need to identify that problem. And then we don't need to, once we have identified, we will be looking into the regulation. But otherwise, I don't believe that we need to put unnecessary costs on businesses and operators. Of course, privacy, I fully understand. There might be the need for that. But that is something that we have to still work on. So I'm not a believer in unnecessary regulations. In biotech space, that is what happened. We don't want knee-jerk reactions because the understanding we have for the industry at the moment may not be the same in maybe 5 or 10 years. So it should not be based on technology. It should be based on a much wider application of the technology, like with the biotech legislation. It has no legislation now after 20 years. We are finding that it's not applicable anymore. So these fields are evolving, and we need to evolve our thinking as well. Thank you.
So, where will the funding for innovation be? We know that it's a good thing. I think everyone agrees that innovation is vital, solving these big problems. Where is the funding going to come from? What's the mix of private, public? Because currently, I guess, what we heard this morning, earlier from Catherine, is that, the barrel's pretty light in this country, and we do need some. So what's the plan?
So the Opportunities Party, I think in this space, it's very clear how we're like a blue-green kind of party. And so I'll just give an example. We are more progressive in our tax reform, for example. Our tax policy is very aligned to the Greens because we do think that a tax reform is needed in order to generate the amount of money that we need for the issues that we have. And the way that we're blue with innovation, or right of center, is because we think that the money needs to go to institutions like Creative HQ, Callahan Innovation, and away from government. Innovation is kind of an it's like government and innovation are mutually exclusive. The role of government is almost the opposite of innovation. Its purpose is to stabilize and provide continuity. By design, it struggles with the idea of innovation. We really need to get out of the way, because by design we're not supposed to innovate. We're not supposed to take risks. That's not the purpose of government. So we really struggle, I think, in this space of enabling, and we just get in the way. So progressively we need to develop our tax policy that generates the income, and then when we're thinking about innovation and supporting the startup community and initial stages of funding and small kind of enterprises, we really need to get out of the way and let the sector and agencies like Creative HQ do what they do with money that we give them from the tax reform we're going to do.
Yeah, just completely agree that we need to raise more revenue to invest in a whole lot of public services and infrastructure, and we can do that if we have something like a capital gains tax, or the Greens have proposed specifically a wealth tax this time. Also an increase to corporate tax rate, because a few big corporates have been increasing their profits at a time when we're also seeing higher prices for people. It makes sense that more of that comes back to public good, because they couldn't profit in New Zealand if government wasn't investing in all of this public good stuff that enables people to be consumers. So the banks, the supermarkets, building construction companies, a few others are the ones that dominate that. So we've shown that you can give a tax cut to 95% of New Zealanders, plus have a guaranteed minimum income, plus give a whole lot more financial support to people when they're sick or when they have young children under the age of 3, and have enough to give everyone free dental services, universal of all ages, that we can invest in affordable housing, that we can invest in marine protected areas, and I think that we've made a few other announcements recently. That's all in our manifesto. And you know, interregional passenger rail and better public transport and surface light rail in our 3 biggest cities. And you know, there's all this stuff we can do if we just change the tax system so it's focused more on ensuring everyone has that guaranteed minimum income and those public services. And then when people do really, really well, they pay it back through tax, and that's fair. That's what guarantees equality of opportunity. If we don't change the system, wealth becomes concentrated in a smaller group of people. That's actually bad for innovation. It's bad for the economy, and it doesn't really serve our people when we need to face a crisis like the climate crisis.
I want to move on to our next section, which is startups in the tech sector. But before I do, everyone here was able to ask questions. And the last question from this round actually came from Inglewood High School. So they want to know, how should technology and innovation become a key part of education?
Shall I have a little go?
Go, boy.
All right, well, first off, go to school. That would be really good. And
at school.
At school. No, that's really good. I mean, in my electorate in Papakura, some kids are not at school and others are. And it's the kids who aren't at school who really need to be at school. So for a start, we could make the use of technology and innovation, AI, in the classroom, helping kids with their homework, as other countries have done, small developed and medium developed nations have done, actually using it much more, because otherwise we just keep on adding more people without getting better results. And if I look at, when you talk about innovation government, there was, that oxymoron, absolutely. I think that was you that said that earlier. Because basically, we need to look to the private sector to come up with those solutions. We've got them. We've been to the high-tech wards. We've seen this work going on already. It's available here in New Zealand, and it's being used overseas, because nobody here in the Ministry of Education is going to do it. And we are going to have to use innovation and technology, because kids are not going to go to school if they're bored and they need to have something to get themselves excited about. They need to say a way forward. So when I look at this, we have enormous opportunities, but we just have to be brave enough to take them. And by the way, we have to be brave enough to sometimes fail. And that's something we don't generally do in government. We don't like saying it, even if there is a failure. Just say it. Learn from it. Move on.
All right. It looked like you're chomping the bit. Last little bit and then we'll move on.
Inglewood School in Taranaki, what an opportunity to learn about sustainable energy solutions and the just transition from being from fossil fuel driven energy dependency onto more green alternatives. And my final point is that there is a huge amount of work going on through the Pūhoro STEM program to get what is the much more diverse cohort of kids coming through, breaking down the barriers to engagement for Māori and Pacific in STEM, and that is crucial work.
Look, I'll move on, because the role of startups and tech do not want to get missed out, and I actually really don't want to miss out on the innovation inside government, despite a couple of things that were said there. But look, the role of startups and tech, it's an area with steady growth, 10% year on year, which means by 2030 it will be double what it is today. From anyone, whoever wants to be brave, what is the number one policy you have that will support founders?
Well, for a start, we have to have a policy or a culture in New Zealand where we're not prepared just to be startups. We need to scale them up. And whether that's by using the visa system that we've announced around highly qualified people to come in here and to be part of our success story in tech and innovation, or whether it's around the ESOP changes that we want to make sure that we get in place as soon as possible after the election, should we be in government. This is going to actually help people to have a stake in and stay. So we don't have enough people. We have always in this country had this tyranny. People think it's of distance. No, it's not. It's of capital, talent, and markets. And we need the right people to help us do that. And we cannot be xenophobic about it. We have to let people come here who are going to add to our story, and we need to be constantly thinking about global, constantly, everything.
So our number one policy is to get rid of unnecessary red tape. Because when you're a startup, you are thinking of a lot of things. And when you have to go through that unnecessary red tape, it really puts people off. And we don't want people, those who are thinking of having a startup here, move to another country just because the regulations here are not letting them take their work to the next stage. And there are so many industries I can mention. LensaTech, which was mentioned by Catherine, now it's moved to US. And so we don't want companies starting here and going to other countries only because the regulations are stopping them to go to the next level. We want these startups to blossom and become those big companies which we heard about, Zero, Trade Me, and other companies. Now, yes, we do understand that skill base is really important because that talent is needed in the startup industry. We need to look into that. Second, we need to also make sure that startup is having easy access to people. If it's from overseas, it should be, and locally as well. The Employment Relations Act, which actually, because when people are specialists in their field, sometimes they don't want to be employees in a company. They want to work as contractors. But the Employment Relations Act actually creates a hindrance for these people to provide that kind of a contractor service to these startups. So we will amend the Employment Relations Act so that these specialist people, those who are needed by some startups, can actually work as contractors for them. So yeah, these are just a few things which I can list right now.
Policies.
I want to jump in on a completely different point, which is guaranteed minimum income, affordable housing, better public transport, and more people-friendly cities. Because that means people can afford to live somewhere. They can attract staff if they're in a dynamic, vibrant city that gives you opportunities, affordable housing, and that guaranteed income security so that you can take risks and be creative and try things and know that you're not going to end up completely impoverished at the end.
I've met a lot of people who have come to New Zealand to start companies or to bring aspects of their expertise here, and I'd endorse Julianne's vision there that the things that make New Zealand great are a big part of what attracts people to New Zealand, and I'd be cautious about anything that would undermine our social contract, like eroding our employment rights. I think the thing that I touched in my opening remarks about the funding support, but the one other item about talent I want to draw to your attention is the work we've started on applied PhDs, which is part of the Te Ao Pairangi reforms and funded through the last budget. We want PhDs who want a career outside of the ivory tower to be able to start that relationship with a startup while they're at uni and have a meaningful component and be funded to do the work in startups or in CRIs, and for that to be a much more established path, like it is in Australia, like it is in Germany, into industry. So that's, I think, a local solution to the talent problem I know founders face.
Going once, going twice? No? Next, I've got a question here actually from a local founder, CEO of Henry James Fuller. Has anyone in your party actually had real experience as a founder or working in an early stage company in the tech sector? Yeah, who?
David Parker was involved in A2 Milk.
Okay.
I have a manufacturing business which originally was a confectionery manufacturing business, but with my scientific background, we have evolved the business into making some private label products for many functional food and other companies. So we do a lot of new product development in various fields, and once the product is approved, then obviously it's manufactured under private label. So I do understand what startups and businesses go through when you're working in your own business, when you have your own investment in your business. It's a very different scenario to going and working in some other business. It's tough. It's tough. So we need to do something about it.
So, not in the tech sector, but I feel I'm a child of the startup community here in Wellington particularly. I tried very poorly and failed miserably because I'm not business savvy in that way, but I did try and start a social enterprise to enable migrant women from non-English speaking countries to be their first employer in Wellington in order for me to be their reference for the public service. And I did that for 4 years, and that's why I was so involved with Creative HQ, and I was a mentor here for the accelerating programs, and I tried with a lot of heart and a lot of drive to stand something up that was desperately needed and still is desperately needed for that group of people, which really struggle to get into government in Wellington and into the big corporates because they need a reference that they don't have. So I feel I have a lot of very visceral and real experience in the startup space. And like I said in my intro, in terms of the impact it has in these women's lives, we ended up employing around 50 or giving reference for 50 women. And it might not seem a lot in the scheme of things, but for those 50 women, my startup had a massive impact. It was life-changing. It was the difference between them staying and leaving, having dignity and not having dignity. And so I feel like I can confidently say that I have been a child and a product of the startup community in Wellington.
I don't know if I can comment on every person in my caucus, but James Shaw was involved in Akina, and helping a lot of businesses and social enterprises before he became co-leader of the Greens and an MP. Chloe Zorbrick was really involved as starting her own business at a really young age before she got into politics. I'm thinking that we have a new candidate named Scott Willis who was involved in this really cool Blue Skin Energy Trust down in Dunedin, trying to get community wind energy started up in Blue Skin Bay. Which is really interesting, but ran into some hurdles and has been lobbying very hard for changes to the resource management scheme approach to wind farms so that we could get more renewable generation happening at a community scale, so not at large scale, but at that community scale. And I pitched for funding when I was doing my master's to start a car share. There was no car share in New Zealand when I got here. So when I was at University of Auckland, we pitched twice as a community social enterprise. And the guy who was sponsoring us, it was through like the Ice House. He absolutely believed, and we'd done all this financial analysis more than the other pitches. But the guys who were doing the judging didn't believe us about how you could get such amazing returns from enabling people to have access to a car without having to own one. And since then, luckily, Mevo and City Hop have got started up. So thank goodness.
Right, well, I can't tell you everybody who's done things, but I can say that my colleague Sam Uffendale has set up a startup before he came to politics, and it was on nutrition around animals and husbandry. And I started up 3 businesses and from nothing, and all of them I sold them for a profit, which I must say I really enjoyed. But I understand what it's like to have to do the GST at 2 o'clock in the morning and being the last person paid in the place. I understand what it's like to employ people, and I understand how hard it is to say sometimes it's not working. So I do understand that, but I understand all about how hard it is to start a business But the regulatory regulatory environment is also tantamount to whether or not people can succeed or not, as well as the capital funding and staffing.
Staffing. So we touched on it earlier about the immigration settings and things like that. Another question that we had was around that. How do we ensure we're attracting top talent here? Not just talking about the founder aspect, but just the talent, the developers and that to work in our thriving ecosystem. What are we going to do to make sure they want to live here? We heard about, actually we need them to be able to afford to and all the rest of it. What are we doing to attract them?
I'll just take that because remember you asked that question about what we would be exporting in 2030 or 40 or 50, like our bigger exports. And I really hope that that's not our people. Because yes, we want to attract talent from other countries, but for me it's also important that we are able to retain our talented people here in New Zealand. Because I'm going to so many events and what I'm hearing from parents of these people, those who have just graduated, for 6 to 8 months they were looking for a job that suited their degree or skill sets, couldn't find a job and finally have found a job, couldn't find a job here, finally found a job in Australia and they're moving out to Australia. And so younger siblings in the family are following the same thing, which is a very scary thing. So yes, we want to attract talent. As I said, yes, startups should have access to talent from overseas. They have to present their case for that. But talent that we have here, I'm really concerned that we are able to retain them here. And we cannot, our academic institutes, as we have heard about PhDs and research fellowships, they will end at one day. That's a temporary solution. So our academic institutes cannot continue to absorb every graduate, every talented person that we produce through our taxpayers' money. So we need to have some industries here to be able to absorb that. And for that, we need to make sure that the regulations are such that we are able to attract companies to come here, and companies that are here, able to stay here.
I just wanted to provide, I guess, a different perspective to this answer. So in terms of talent and attracting talent, there's a lot of untapped talent in New Zealand, and migrant people from non-English speaking countries especially get dismissed incredibly quickly. In most employment settings, the bigger the institution, the quicker they get dismissed. So I just want to make sure that we're acknowledging as a society that the second I say, hey, in Mexico City, we have the fastest public transport system ever developed, and watch everyone check out because it's from Mexico. It's like, oh no, that wouldn't work here. That context doesn't apply. We all, politicians, voters, and institutions, need to stop dismissing people for their views, especially with the forecast of population trends and diversification and growth. We have a massive untapped talent in New Zealand, Pacifica, Maori, they will go on about this for days. So I just wanted to provide that perspective that, yeah, sure, we need to bring people in, and that is a thing, but we also need to stop with this hesitation around thinking that if it's not here, and if it's overseas, it doesn't apply, and we see it everywhere at all levels.
Judith, and then we're going to move on.
We have become a really xenophobic country. Who here was not born in New Zealand? Oh, you know? Yeah. Okay, thank you for coming. And actually, by the way, thank you for staying. Because we are losing talent every year, particularly to our dear close friends, the Australians. And we can't continue to do it. And I like the point that Nadia's made, is that, we can't afford to say, we haven't known you for umpteen generations, so you're no good. I want you to be here because that is what drives the energy that we need in this country. So we've already announced 3 specific visas, particularly around tech and highly qualified people. We will need people here. We need a digital nomad visa so that people can come here, try it for a year, see what they think, and hopefully they will fall in love with us and we will fall in love with them and they will want to stay here and add to our ecosystem, which is all about high-end tech and solving solutions.
All right, cool. Thank you. Natalia, just referencing, name check.
Sorry, Natalia. Sorry, that is me, you see. Bad me. Thank you, Natalia, for forgiving me.
All right.
So many people still need to.
So we've been talking about the produce, if you like, of innovation, of the tech sector, the sausages, if you like. Now we're taking a turn to the sausage factory. What is inside innovation happening inside government? What are the barriers that exist? So what we're going to be talking about here is that our government has to be innovative if we're to solve some of these big gnarly challenges. They struggle with that. There's lots of barriers. What are you going to do to remove the barriers so our public sector can innovate because they must?
Okay. Well, I mean, I just have to say one of the barriers is managerialism in the public sector. It's an absolute nightmare, I think. I think it's good that we agree, and we should all agree to do something about it, because I do think it was a product of the kind of neoliberal revolution in the 80s and 90s, and an embrace of like a corporate hierarchical culture in the public service, which is really, really focused on trying to, outputs and making sure that there's accountability, but weirdly it goes over the top to the point where you just get box ticking behavior and a lot of avoidance of taking risk. And the hierarchy to me is a problem. Like when I was a minister, I found I want to talk to the people who are doing the direct work and research, and what would happen is there's this chain of managers in the middle, and they don't really know the stuff, but they'll come and talk to ministers, and it's a barrier, and I think it's really important for us to talk about, because I think it ends up being a barrier to elected people being able to implement the vision they've been elected to implement, when the institutions are so kind of resistant to any sort of change and are just so risk adverse. But I don't think any politician or political party is really proposing the perfect solution. And I definitely think the attacks on the public service and wasteful spending are not helpful, because they contribute to that risk adverseness of like, oh shit, we can't do anything or we might get attacked. So it's a complex problem. And I just want to name the fact that in the current political debate, people who are saying we need fewer public servants, or we need fewer people working in the public sector and government is the problem, I absolutely fundamentally disagree. I think the public sector is really, really important, and it's not working for us right now. And as someone who's been a minister before and would like to be a minister again, I'm very aware of that problem and very interested in how we change that hierarchical culture and try to develop organizations that are actually enabling the talented people who are doing the real work to just get on with it and do the work and provide good advice to ministers, and and how.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, topic really close to my heart, because there's so much we need to change in government, and if I think about my other portfolio in health, so much we want to get done. That for a start, we need to take the politics out when someone does try to do something new. I mean, a problem across the political spectrum, we accept everyone says is a problem, which is the low rates of childhood vaccination. The other day I'm on the campaign trail answering for why we're giving out incentives to parents whose kids aren't getting vaccinated. It's a way of doing something differently, but it's a magnet for criticism because it's different. Why shouldn't that criticism be show us that it works? That would be a valid criticism. But don't give out something and do something differently because it's not available to everyone. I don't like that. We had some moments in COVID that we innovated well and others that we didn't, and I think learning the lessons from that is really important, and I've tried to feed that into the Royal Commission in my own when they talk to me about it. But some things on the IT side during COVID went well. For the first time in public health history in New Zealand, we had good tech for our public health devices, contact tracing, vaccine certificates, and so on. On other things like medical devices, it was really terrible because our legislation was not fit for purpose. So we were stuck with expensive PCR tests in centralised laboratories that took 48 hours, or 24 to 48 hours to process, and we couldn't get innovative tests out around the community. So making sure that our laws are fit for purpose, including through the Therapeutic Products Bill, was one of the ways in which we address that.
Right.
So very quickly, I would like to address a couple of points which were made by Julian and Aisha over here. So Julian talked about the public sector. Just ballooning the public sector doesn't mean there is more innovation happening, right? The question was about how do we bring innovation in our public sector, in our government departments. And talking about how big the public sector is, if it is bigger, that means there is more innovation. I reject that point. And giving Prezi cards, which were mentioned here, to women, those who are pregnant, based on their race, is wrong. Why can't every pregnant woman then get that Prezi card? Why only some women of certain race get the Prezi card? that I do not, ACT Party doesn't believe in that. ACT Party believes in one Kiwi, one vote. There should be nothing based on race, nothing based on gender. And finally, coming to the point of innovation, yes, if you're working in private sector, you will know that CEs of the private sector, they have KPIs, right? And if they don't meet those KPIs, what happens to those CEs? They have to move on. They are removed from their job. Why doesn't that happen in the public sector? Why public sector CEOs are different from private sector CEOs? We need to hold them to account. And of course the minister is accountable as well, because we don't want political interference from them. But the CEO should be held accountable as well. They should be given KPIs, which the ACT Party will do. We want to see the system is agile so that they can innovate rather than creating a lot of more number of people means more hurdles for people. That's not adding to innovation.
All right, our time is racing away, and I've got a couple of bangers I want to ask. This next one is from David Latali, Butterbean, who you might know, a big advocate for South Auckland. The question was particularly directed at National and Labour, and that was, look, in the past you've talked about innovation needed to address social issues. How are you going to make sure that you actually do something different? Because BAU isn't working. What are you going to do?
Well, let's take health as an example of social issues. We are going to empower the people impacted by the social issues to take care of more of their decisions. And that is what's happening through the Māori Health Authority. And I know the work that David Latele does is incredible work for Māori and Pacific people in South Auckland. The other thing we will do is make sure that the end users of innovation have a seat at the table in our missions, for example, and that when we fund research, science and innovation, we are funding the full pathway to impact. So often on your grants, the work that you do, building a community of interest around your work, is not funded. We have to fund that because it's real work and essential to the quality of product that you develop.
So I'd love to see innovation as one of those matters that are addressed every time government agencies are questioned about where their money's going and what it's being used for. And the reason for that is that without innovation, we're just going to keep adding more and more money into the pile and wondering why we keep getting the same result. So David Talley doesn't discriminate against people on the basis of ethnicity. He helps people who go to him for help. And I think that's one of the things that we need to do. We need to say what is working. So whether it's community groups, whether it's in housing, whether it's community groups in terms of the obesity issues that Dave is dealing with, or the mental health issues that people like Mike King have been dealing with. These are the sorts of innovators that we have out there, because in government it's very hard for bureaucrats to be able to say, oh, well, we're prepared to fail. I mean, frankly, they don't want to do that. So we need to actually let them use people who are actually able to be more creative in how they come about solutions, and then having done that, adopt those solutions themselves and fund them properly when we've got great results. The social investment model, which Bill English brought in, is something that we will be bringing again, because it looks at people as humans with all sorts of multiple issues that they're dealing with and says, how can we get the best outcomes for people with this effort that we're putting in?
So I'm very aware, because I know Julian has to race very, very soon. Can I get a yes/no answer from everyone on this question? There is no strategy and therefore really no measures of innovation for our public sector. Would you endorse a public sector innovation strategy for our government agencies?
Yes.
Yes.
We need a strategy for innovation.
Yes.
Yeah, I certainly would. I mean, you're talking about, what, 29% of the population? Hot money. Absolutely, why wouldn't you?
It's on record. Okay, look, so we need trust in our government, we need transparency. What can we do from a technology lens to increase the trust in government, which is at an all-time low?
Transparency and accountability are really hard for the government. Transparency requires an enormous amount of time, effort, and money. And I think that if we reduce the scope of what we're doing so we can be fully transparent on a couple of things, that will increase people's trust. At the moment, we're trying to be transparent across everything, and the current government will tell you it is impossible, especially with the scope that they've got. So I think that reducing the scope, picking a priority, being like, we're going to be fully transparent on child poverty, or fully transparent on innovation, or fully transparent on this, and then committing to full transparency and accessibility, I might add, which is also lacking enormously in public services, I think the trust will increase.
I think you're absolutely wrong, Natalia. I think what we need to do is we need to have government agencies fully release reports and letters and papers under the OIA system, instead of sending out pages and pages of blanked out information or holding written questions until after Parliament has lifted. That is the sort of thing that we see. And actually, don't tell people you're going to be transparent in government if you have absolutely no intention of doing it. But, you know, this has actually got to quite a crucial issue, because certainly post-COVID, trust in government and government agencies and being told what is actually science has dropped, and we need to reinvigorate it. Otherwise, people will simply start going off protesting in Parliament.
Last point, and then we're going to do our quick fire lightning to finish, because Julianne, I'm conscious.
There are huge amounts of issues around government holding data. That is a matter of public trust at the moment, and they are exacerbated by AI. So all of the practices that we have regularly for our holding of data need to be take the opportunities of AI into account, and our accountability. And we basically need a new social contract around that. It's just a huge project.
Amazing. Okay, Julianne, I'm going to hit you first because I know you do have to run. Quick fire, you know, as one or few words as possible. Who would you seek support from in regards to startup and tech sector? A real person when you are, hopefully, as you say, the minister going forward. Who will you, what's the expert in the field you would call when you've got a problem in this area?
I don't know the answer to that question. Sorry, I'm not the spokesperson for technology. I'm finance, energy, a whole lot of other things, transport, urban development. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a really good question, and generally in the sectors where I am spokesperson, I think it's really, really important to talk to people on the ground, and that's how you get really good information. And I think that is, when you're a minister, it's the most important thing that you're able to get information from people on the ground, to understand the real issues that are facing them and to be able to bring that to the beehive.
Do you think New Zealand is ambitious enough?
Well, I want to see New Zealand be ambitious for everyone, not just one person. A lot of times we talk about ambition, and it's like ambition to be richer than everyone else. Now, my ambition is for everyone in New Zealand to have enough for us to be pulling our weight and restoring nature and taking action on the climate crisis. And I know we can do that. I know we can do that. I know we can do better.
Right. Panji, who is the most innovative person in your party?
Actually, I would say our leader, David Seymour, because he's grown the party from 1 person to 10 MPs now, and it's going to be bigger in after 14th of October.
Okay. If the word innovation was banned, what would you use in its place?
Creativity.
Okay. All right. Fast hit. Where Natalia, coming to you. Who did you vote for before there was top?
Well, I've only been in New Zealand when there's top, so one of my votes always went to top. But in full honesty, because of MMP, I went one tick top and one tick national one election, and one tick top and then another tick Labour the other election. I am a political scientist, so I am a swing voter.
Would you support having 0.1% of Treasury's budget put entirely in a innovation fund, Dragon's Den style?
If I could get the Treasury to do anything, sure. But I just wanted to answer, I know you didn't ask me, but the two people I would ask to collaborate on this would be Frank Advice and Creative HQ as my first port of call to set this in train.
There's people who already work with me on this. If I name them, then that's really hard.
I'm coming for a different question to you.
Okay, right.
I'm sure you've got a Rolodex full of friends there.
I do.
So, Startup Council claims we need 5,000 new startups by 2030. Is that a goal worth chasing?
It is a goal, but we also need scale up from that. We can't just be startup. We have to have scaled up and that's the way we're going to get more startups coming through.
How important is this portfolio to you? Will you?
Oh, this is so much fun. I love it so much, and I believe that the leader, when he's Prime Minister, will make a very good choice.
Should the government have a Chief Innovation Officer?
I think we should have a Minister for Technology who is, in fact, the person who brings stuff together and gets stuff done.
Do you know Minister Audrey Tang from Taiwan?
I personally do not, but I know exactly who that person is, and she has been unbelievable. In fact, I remember during COVID we quoted what the work she was doing around COVID at that time. So unbelievable.
We love it. Did I skip anyone? Yes, Aisha. Sorry, I was jumping over the show. What is different this time? What will you do to support innovation that you didn't do in the current term?
Mission-led funding, bringing together best innovators, scientists, government and the community around a common cause.
Okay. And how important is this portfolio to you?
It's the one that stops me going crazy from the other one.
Do you think we should also have a Chief Innovation Officer?
Yes.
And coming along tonight, what was the top point you wanted to make to this audience?
Well, thank you for the work you do, and I hope that we've demonstrated through particularly the investment models that we've set up, that we've got your back with New Zealand Capital Growth Partners, the new tools we've put out through the Arahia, and our determination to keep supporting you in the future.
All right, Kaupai. Hey, look, that formally ends. Don't you go anywhere. Julie and Ginger, you can run. You've got a hall pass. You've got a hall pass. You've got a hall pass. Hold on. So, everyone else, I want you to take your phones out. Pretty please, take your phones out. All of you. These guys, they're trying to get out of here. Hold on. Get your phone out and look, go to menti.com, which is on the screen, menti.com. All right, easy. And punch in that code.
Report it now.
Polling is voting early. Ladies and gentlemen, polling is voting early. Are you in there? Look, while you're getting in there, go into that code, answer the questions. While you're doing that, I want to do a shout out to she doesn't know this, but our CE Catherine, who was up earlier for her nomination today in the Inspiring Woman Leading category in the International Business Awards. Stick around, have a cup of tea with them. Julianne, you're allowed to go.
Sorry.
Look, actually, you know what, mate? It's suffrage day. You can do whatever.
And stick around.